And with me live is Chris Farrell. You're in Washington, D.C., Chris, the director of the Investigations and Research at Judicial Watch. Thanks for joining me, Chris.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
All right. Well, first of all, will Special Counsel Robert Mueller take up an investigation into his longtime friend James Comey with this latest revelation?
Well, the first thing is Mr. Mueller, by definition, literally by the black letter law regulating the appointment of a special counsel, is disqualified. He has an enormous conflict of interest because Mr. Mueller and Mr. Comey are pals. And it specifically says in the regulation that a person cannot occupy the position of special counsel if he has an ongoing or long-term personal relationship with one of the principal characters in the investigation. And you'll remember that Mr. Comey, under oath in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, said that he deliberately leaked government information in order to provoke the forming of a special counsel. So Mueller's relationship with Comey, by definition, disqualifies Mueller. Why he's still running around conducting the investigation, it's a very large, very grave ethics question, and it calls into question his judgment. This whole thing, first of all, we have an instance where no one can name the criminal predicate. No one can tell you what the crime is.
Right.
They're investigating people looking for a crime.
Well, Chris, we've got, of course, on one side, you've got Mueller's investigation into the Trump-Russia alleged ties there. So when or do you expect the Justice Department to act on a second special counsel to look into this Comey situation with Clinton's emails?
Yeah, with respect to Comey and the email thing, Attorney General Sessions, who unfortunately has been absent, right? We haven't seen him for a while. But Attorney General Sessions is certainly within his rights to appoint one of his deputies. You don't need a special counsel. You need a deputy attorney general or a senior U.S. attorney to just do what attorneys would call a de novo review, right? A complete fresh look at the whole Clinton saga, because it's quite clear that that Comey threw the investigation before it even got to its end point. He granted all sorts of people various privileges and immunities. There were no subpoenas for documents, which is outrageous, no grand jury formed. When Mrs. Clinton was interviewed, it wasn't under oath or she wasn't even Mirandized as someone who was a suspect. This is a kind of behavior. This is Investigations 101. I know this because I was a special agent of Army counterintelligence, and I've done these sort of investigations. So the fact that she was not Mirandized, that it wasn't under oath, that it wasn't recorded, that when she claimed she couldn't remember various briefings on security matters, why they didn't pause and pull out her briefing document, ask her to review it and refresh her recollection, and then come back and say, now, do you remember signing this? Oh, yes. I mean, that would be an instance where you'd have this sudden awakening, this epiphany, right?
Right. Well, your response to the FBI denying the FOIA request so far, or at least this week, saying that there's just not enough public interest in this case. What's your response to that for someone who has looked into this case for so long?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a lie. Let's be clear. I mean, it is a willful telling of a falsehood, right? They know better. There's tremendous public interest in this. And so they just sort of draw their own conclusion and forgive themselves. They're not going to get away with it, frankly. But this is a bureaucratic game that we're involved in. It's a long-haul fight. What I find most disturbing is that the sort of entrenched leftist bureaucrats in the Justice Department get away with this, that Attorney General Sessions hasn't imposed his will or put sort of his fingerprint on the organization where they can get away with this and make these outrageous claims to courts.
Well, last question, Chris. With the president, well, he tweeted about this morning, calling the whole process rigged. Now he's got Director Wray in the FBI, who we were just discussing, but he's also got his AG in Sessions. So what needs to happen here to gain the president's trust back?
Well, there needs to be this fresh look. It's clear that the Clinton email investigation was thrown. Any other government employee who engaged in the same conduct would currently be sitting in a federal penitentiary. I say that based on my own personal firsthand experience as an investigator. So There really needs to be a reopening of the entire investigation and a relook, because the disparity in treatment between Mrs. Clinton and the average government employee with access to classified information reinforces this notion of laws are for the little people, right? It's unacceptable, and there's got to be a legitimate, clean investigation.
All right, Chris Farrell with the Judicial Watch, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.